Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Not That Bad, a movie podcast. Happy to welcome you back. My name, of course, is Connor, aka Xenomorph, the alien princess warrior. And I am joined by my once again illustrious co-host, Gabe Tice. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm going to use my prestige to hawk off this week's product placement. Big Wave
Ooh.
Golden Ale for when you want to surf those big waves, but they seem so far out. This just crack open a cold Big Wave Golden Ale.
Hell, hey, Big Wave, if you're listening, pay us. If Big Wave doesn't want to pay us, Dos Equis, pay us.
Yeah.
So somebody better pay us.
See, we do product placement the reverse. First we plug and then we pray that somebody gives us money for it.
In some cases, demand.
Yeah. I can't wait to sell out, dude.
I know, dude. We're gonna have like 60 Blue Chew ads throughout our entire
and
video.
speaking of selling out, we're here to talk about
Alien versus Predator.
Now, let me double check that. It's just Alien versus Predator, even though there's multiple aliens.
I think so. I think the idea is like because it would be aliens versus predators, and I think it just sounded better for it. I think the comic book series is Aliens versus Predator, but the movie is Alien versus Predator, if I'm thinking correctly.
And then the next one, that's Aliens versus Predator Requiem, right?
Yes, AVP Requiem is next. Either way, whether it's Aliens or Alien, it is AVP. That is that's the title that the movie ran with. It's all over the posters. It is AVP in the tradition of shrinking down your titles in the early 2000s. This movie follows the trend.
Yeah, and oh boy, this is a controversial one. This is probably kind of definitive example of a movie that is cool to hate. Like, I don't think that people hate this more than most movies. I just think it has become so fashionable to say bad things about it or to dismiss it. Every hipster film bro would love to take shots at it whenever either Alien or Predator comes up. It's of course directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who is just under Michael Bay on the list of directors it is really, really cool to shit on. And me not being cool at all, I'm really excited to defend this movie. This was my pick. I'm not gonna make it out like I think this is a masterpiece or even that it's that good. But look, it's like Einstein said, it's all about relativity. And this is a film in a franchise full of really disappointing schlock. Let's not get it twisted. So I'm comparing it to many other films in the franchise when I watch it. And yeah, Connor, I'm curious, what history do you have with AVP?
So my history with AVP is one that's I think kind of unique to our generation. Growing up, I was right at the age at this point where I was really starting to like pay attention to what I was seeing on television. I remember seeing commercials for AVP. I remember the hype around it coming out, even being a child at the time. I remember there was just a lot of hype around this movie, and everybody was talking about it. When it came out, the Blockbuster near me completely sold out. I guess sold out. I don't know. They were out of stock the day that it came out. It was a big deal in 2004 when it came out. It came out with a lot of hype around it. And in the era where Paul W.S. Anderson was sort of, in a weird way, some kind of like micro action king. I mean, he's coming off of movies like Resident Evil and
Event Horizon. Don't forget that.
Yes, and Event Horizon. But I want to say too, excuse me, I know that this is a film that you talked about people loving to hate, but my history with this film, I guess, is interesting because I watched it many years ago, and then I watched it again maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I haven't picked it up since. But when you told me that it was contested, when we had a private conversation about whether or not we were gonna, what we were gonna pick next, when you told me this, I couldn't believe that it was something that people were destroying, because I don't remember any hate, and I don't am not in enough circles of like sci-fi action films that I had seen a lot of it. So this is going to get interesting to get into for me, because I'm coming from a perspective where it's been years since I've seen it. I remember it as a kid, but this is the first time in a long time that I'm watching it. I knew nothing of the hate, and from your perspective, it seems like you have a little bit of a history with it, but you were definitely aware of the hatred that this movie has.
I didn't watch it because of the hate. It took me a long time to finally get around to putting this thing on, just because I, two things would have happened. One, I would have watched a bad movie that I probably wouldn't enjoy. The other, the far worse outcome, is that I would come out being a guy who likes Alien versus Predator. What a burden to carry. Even if
Sometimes that's worse than just actually liking a movie or watching a movie or even hating it. It's worse to be the guy that loves it.
the worst. It's like, oh no. It's like
Especially with us, where we have friends that are like pretentious movie buffs, that are like their favorite movie is some obscure French film you've never heard of, and then you're like, well, I kind of like Alien versus Predator. I don't know.
yeah. Now, again, so it's all about expectations. When this movie came out, you have to remember the hype that was around it. People had been waiting for this movie since Predator 2, which was at least 10 years before. Like, you know, a 10-year-old who saw Predator 2 would have been in college when they saw this movie. You know, that's a lot of buildup. And you know, like you said, Paul W.S. Anderson's reputation was actually pretty solid, especially for people who saw Event Horizon, which is a lovely movie and a really great tribute to Alien. I think that's probably why he got the job, among other reasons. So you go in really expecting like an epic monster clash, you know, a battle of these two titans of terror, and instead you get a fun little monster movie in this Arctic temple with a bunch of you know, let's face it, you know, pretty forgettable characters, save a few exceptions. You know, so just where people's hopes were versus what the movie actually was, it just, the gap is rarely that wide. You know, it's almost like Phantom Menace levels of bad, except I would argue that this is a much better movie than people give credit for. So after all of this time, and after we've gotten some terrible sequels in both of these franchises, you know, counting the movie that came right after this, Requiem, I just think it stands out. You know, it's a cut above the rest, and I'm excited to explain why I even feel compelled to defend this movie. But Connor, I'm really curious. You know, since I picked this, and we haven't talked, I don't know much about your thoughts yet. I want you to start us off with your first pro.
Well, I'm happy to kick us off in the good section here, and I'm going to be starting off with one that I feel like was mixed when I was reading through reviews of this. I really like the setting. You know, personally, I'm one of those people who thinks that while some action stories don't really work in a winter like a wintry snow-filled frozen environment, I think it does add a lot when you have these potentially bloody fight scenes and you know, these sort of like harsh dark colors sort of contrasting with the white from the snow and the surrounding areas. I really liked that they set it in this sort of Arctic remote area. It makes it more believable that the predators would set up a hunting ground in this sort of remote area and continue to use it over the years, which is clear based on several things that we see throughout the movie. But I really dig that they chose this sort of Arctic cold setting for the movie, because it makes sense on why, you know, nobody's coming to save them, why it's not on television coverage and hitting the news. But at the same time, it gives you this sense of isolation, even though the area that they're covering is quite large. So I really dig the setting overall. I think it was a great choice for where to put the film.
You're absolutely right, in my opinion. And I'm gonna call out the fan base. You know, fans complained that this movie feels cheap because it's mostly in one location. Like Alien is set entirely on that spaceship, and Predator is set entirely in the jungle, right? And these movies are famous because they choose to use these isolated settings. It really enhances the claustrophobia and the paranoia. But when this movie does it, oh no, it's cheap, you know. And this is a movie that, you know, you can say whatever you want about this movie, but it's not cheap. There's production value abound. Um, Even though I don't agree with all of the design choices, I mean, I think the effects are state of the art for the most part. And, you know, they use a hell of a lot of practical effects, you know, some CGI, but considering how much more expensive practical are, that shows that they really went above and beyond in that department. So I really hate when people accuse this movie of being cheap when it's actually trying to follow in the tradition of its predecessors of Alien and Predator, which, you know, and Aliens, you know, isolated settings are kind of what these franchises are about. I think I'll just go ahead and start with my first pro, and I've already touched on it. The look of this movie, I love it. The production design, I think the Queen Alien has never looked better. When she's frozen in ice and she starts to wake up, that gives me chills. I have a complaint that I'll get to later about the Predators, but given how they've looked in other installments, I still feel like we're pretty lucky for how these ones turned out. They still have like convincing costumes, and the actors are, I think, still selling it. So yeah, just the look of the movie, I can look at it and just be happy with that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I got to say, you know, bouncing off of that, I'm going to talk about what you brought up, and I'm actually going to sort of transition that into a few points that I have that can all sort of be grouped in to just like the general area of how the film looks. Truthfully, you know, no matter what anybody can say about the film and about how it's how some of the action sequences are shot and some of the complaints that people have about the movie, it's very technically proficient. I mean, the movie has a there's not a single scene that looks like it's out of a B movie. There's not a single scene that the lighting is off. There's not a single scene that is not sort of highlighted by some kind of set piece. And I think that's a really good way to do it. But it doesn't stop there too, because the camera work, while in some places I do think that it works against what they're shooting, in a lot of ways it works for it. I mean, for me, and this is you know, talking about the look of the movie, and I will get into a little bit about the camera movements and stuff, but just like the set pieces and the attention to detail. I mean, you have this temple, right? That's in the style of like Mayans and Aztecs and Egyptians, and you know, all of them is what they say when they're talking about it at that scene. But what's interesting about it is that anytime that you see sort of like the hieroglyphs and the art and stuff that's on this temple, it's all in the style, like an authentic style of whatever it's supposed to be representing, but it has their interpretation of like the predators and aliens mixed into the artwork. That attention to detail goes a long way when you set a film in a isolated single location. You definitely didn't have a short list of things that you can look at and notice in the background, or even at times in the foreground of the film, with the set pieces and attention to detail that they paid with them.
Yeah, I just feel like this whole movie feels like a labor of love. Like I feel like this was made by somebody who really loved these movies, the Alien and Predator movies. I know for a fact that Paul W. Anderson does. And I think that shows. I don't think that automatically makes it a good movie, but so much of the criticism around this is that people think that nobody was trying, that everybody was going through the motions. People call this movie soulless, and I just don't think that's fair. I really don't. Even though, like, look, Paul W. Sanderson has not done himself any favors with his recent output, and I wouldn't say I'm a fan of the guy's work as a whole, but you know, we talk about directors like they're not human. Once you've made a bad movie, you're sent off to this timeout corner.
Yeah, and I'll say too, I love the perspective that you can give on that, because you're somebody who's released a movie out on Blu-ray, The Curse of Professor Zardonicus. Please go get it on Amazon or any of your favorite retailers. But on top of that, as somebody who's been behind the camera myself, or who has sold scripts to things that have been made, when you work in general, when you've worked in or seen the environment that goes into making a film, you start to feel really bad about bad mouthing directors. If the director has a reputation of torturing actors and being terrible to people, and just in general being a dick, like an Uwe Boll, I have no problem talking about how their film was poorly directed and how I hated everything about it. But for looking at a film like this, where it's clear that every member of that crew was working their ass off to make it a good movie, did whatever they could. Obviously some of it was in vain and some of it might not have been in vain. But there was a lot of attention put onto this film. And I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that they weren't lazy with a lot of the things as far as the technical perspective goes, in making this film. I don't see any laziness. I don't see any cutting corners. One of the places that I think is a great thing to highlight, and it may be a small point, and definitely something that my wife doesn't like about the movie, because she hates this in every movie, but the transitions, I thought I love when a film can make their transitions from one scene to another play into some of the things that they use in the film. For example, there's a really cool scene where the predators are looking on this little laser grid that they have on their wrist, and it sort of zooms into the temple and perfectly goes into a shot of them walking down a flight of stairs in that temple. That they do that a lot in this movie. And it's one of the things that just shows the care and attention that was put into the movie, but also the care and attention that was put into making it look good, and making us care about some of the shots.
Yeah, and flow well, the pace.
Yes.
That's actually probably my biggest positive in a way, is the pacing, because first, this movie gets accused of having no suspense. I call foul. I like the first 30 to 45 minutes are just setting up this temple, and the characters are going and discovering the predators' weaponry, and then they discover those face huggers, which is like my favorite scene, when the face huggers start to pop out and everybody's like, wait, what room was this again? Oh, it's the sacrificial room. And then that's when the face huggers strike. I mean, maybe that's a little cheesy for somebody who likes their Alien and Predator movies super gritty and take themselves very seriously. This is not trying to be the original Alien. This is just trying to be a fun B movie with an alien, with aliens and predators within it. So it's just really about watching it with the right mindset. And, maybe if this had come out right after Aliens, that would be really hard to take, because that's such a prestigious movie. But coming after Alien Resurrection and Predator 2, like, can we just have fun with these monsters now? I think we're past the point of always taking them seriously, right?
Yeah, and it's an interesting point that you brought up there, and it actually, I want to highlight a quick pro before I get into my last one, but my last one has something to do with what you just said there, and a quick pro that I have, and it's something that's a little controversial, so I'm not going to talk at length about it.
Please do, please. We need
Well,
to milk it for all it's worth.
We're definitely going to be speaking about it later, and that's why I say I won't talk too much about it now. But while there are aspects of the story that I don't like and that I would not have done, and that's something that I will get into in both the bad section and the ugly section, I think the overall story of the film is something that I really like. I like that there's a sort of this sort of juxtaposition between what the Predator and the aliens exist to do. The Predators are creatures, if you don't know the lore of Predators, they're sort of creatures of the hunt. They are intelligent hunters. They go after things that give them a challenge. And the story that I think gets lost a little bit in this, but it's much more explained in the comic books that led up to Alien versus Predator, is that basically the race of predators has been keeping aliens for hundreds of years at this point, maybe thousands of years, as these sort of like hunting preys. In fact, they're used as a sort of rite of passage in the world of the predators. You kill a xenomorph, in battle, which is usually, I think, if you kill a queen, and you're supposed to get burned, and then if you get burned and you scream, then you're weak and you have to redo your challenges and such. But nevertheless, they explore that in this film, and they kind of show you how the predators are just sort of like doing a dangerous game, sort of, with these aliens. They keep the queen alien locked up. Every once in a while, they'll come to the temple and they'll activate this birthing process, and they'll use human sacrifices as a means to populate a group of aliens for them to hunt. And if any humans survive and try to fight, well, then that's dangerous prey as well, and they'll take them out. While aliens, they exist solely to repopulate and to take out their threats. They are not creatures who are natural hunters. They are defenders and repopulators. And it's cool to see that difference and how predators can be sort of outsmarted by overthinking. We see that a few times in the movie. And while, again, there are aspects of the story that I don't love, those are the aspects that I do love, you know, where you dive into that lore of aliens versus predators, which real quick just leads me to my last big point here, which is it's fucking aliens versus predators, man. Like, as somebody who loves those movies, I love a lot of the alien films. I love some of the predator movies. I'd say at this point, maybe half of them. I love the fact that we got a movie where it's aliens versus predators. We get to see them face off, and it's not just in a comic book setting. We get to see it on screen. And while I think there could have been more to that, and I think it would be much better if sort of like a modern director, like a David Sandberg or somebody along those lines directed a film like this today. I really love the fact that we finally got to see aliens versus predators, man. It's like Jason versus Freddy, man. Like I love the face-offs. I love Godzilla versus Kong, the idea of it. I haven't seen the movie yet. Don't kill me, but I love that idea. I love the idea of getting two icons and smashing them together in a film and just having fun with it. And I think more people need to think about the fact that you're literally watching aliens versus predators right now.
Now we're jaded to it. We've been spoiled by the magic of the movies. No. Yeah, I mean, you've touched on a lot of things that overall I do think add to the movie. The big pro for me that I want to highlight that really does not get enough credit is the our lead protagonist here, Lex, right? She's an archaeologist, reminiscent of Ellen Ripley, but not a ripoff. She's her own character, you know, because Ellen Ripley, she's just a worker, you know, she's just a very competent worker on that spaceship. And this person is an explorer. She's very ambitious. She is very competent, and that saves her in many situations, but she has a very different drive and a very different motivation. And when she throws down with the aliens and when she teams up with the predator, as weird of an idea as that is, I buy it because I'm really sold on it. She has also my favorite character moments in the movie. And yes, I used the words character moments to describe this movie because contrary to popular belief, man, there are actually a couple of pretty decent exchanges here. You know, it's not like a new great character is created, like like Ripley or Hicks or Dutch. But you know, I remember these characters for moments like when Lance Henriksen is talking about the fact that he's going to die soon and that he really wants to see this temple, and then Lex tells him about the death of her father. Well written scene, well acted, and it adds to these characters. It explains and it justifies why they're in this story. That might not sound like much, but for a movie of this genre and for a movie that gets so much hate, that's really more than I was expecting. And let's see, I think I've touched on all my big things. I have some defenses to make that we'll get to obviously in the ugly section. Yeah, so I think the final note that I want to end on is just this movie is also, I think, a good gateway actually into these Alien and Predator movies because it's PG-13, very controversial. We'll get to that. But a young kid who's not ready to see those movies because they're fucked up will will watch this, and I do think they'll be intrigued. I think this would make a big impression on them, and it'll be a gateway drug into a world full of vicious, ultra-violent alien movies. And I think that's a lovely thing, Connor. I really do.
Well, the one thing I will say too to close out, I guess the pro section here is that it's a very easily digestible film. There's nothing that's going to be super profound or upsetting or well, I mean, if you're a fan of some of them, I guess some things could be upsetting, which I guess we'll get into about what fans are upset about. But it's not, you know, horribly offensive. There's not a copious amounts of violence. There's definitely some blood and kills throughout the film, but it's super easy to watch. Nothing major that's going to make you turn away or cringe, or at least not as far as violence goes. And it's very easy to understand the dialogue and everything that's been written in it. So yeah, I think it's a perfect example of a film that's sort of like a gateway. You know, there's no nudity, there's very minimal language. There's even minimal violence, I'd say.
Minimal
overall.
blood. I mean, there's violence in terms of action.
Yes. And there are some scenes that, I mean, depending on like, if you're one of those people who's like very upset by the thought of something popping out of your stomach, I hate to say that there is some of that in the film, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything too horrifically offensive. I think this is a film that I would be very comfortable showing, you know, a child once they reach double-digit ages. You know, no problems there.
Yeah, look, if I had seen this in middle school, this movie would have been the shit. Right?
Oh my God. That's when I saw it for the first. I saw it for the first time when I was maybe 11 or 12. So it's like, yeah, like it was really the right shit back then. Oh yeah.
Right yeah. And it makes me wish I had seen it around that time. But obviously I'm still defending it. I can still, like, the child in me still sees all these things. You know, I can think back to my childhood and appreciate a lot of the things they were going for. That's different than calling it a good movie, but you know,
right.
There's some mature elements in here that still make me feel like I'm watching a real monster movie. Not, you know, it's not Power Rangers or anything.
Oh no, yeah.
Although Power Rangers versus Predator.
Hey, look, I wouldn't be against it, especially if it was like James Van Der Beek's fan film for Power Rangers. That's very like dark. If you've never seen that, look it up.
Van Der Beek, the Dawson's Creek guy.
Yeah. I don't know if he directed it, but I know he's in it. It's like a Power Rangers fan film online, and it's like very dark and violent. Look that up if you haven't seen it. It's pretty interesting. But we've been talking a lot about the good of the movie so far, and at the end of the day, we've highlighted some things that I think, you know, I don't think they're too controversial. I don't think they're too massively and you know, maybe they are. I don't know what the response is going to be, but at the end of the day, we've talked about the good, and we're going to have to talk about the bad too.
Sure. Yeah. And that's another cool thing about this movie is it is fun to talk about the bad, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a fun movie to talk about too. Now this is my choice. I think it's poetic that I guess I have to start and admit what is very wrong with this movie.
I'm glad you admitted that, because I was going to make you go first.
Okay, cool. No, I'm ready. Like, I'm not sensitive about this movie. This wasn't directed by Rob Zombie or anything. This is just just a fun movie to defend. Okay, no, my big con, and this was inescapable for me as I was watching. I actually don't like the Predators in this much at all. I especially do not like their look. I know I complimented the quality of the suits, the quality of the acting, you know. Mm-hmm. If this was the first time the Predators had been introduced, I think I would have rolled with it. But they really contradict what I think we all really like about the Predators. Like, these guys are built like wrestlers, you know, and they move like wrestlers, they fight like wrestlers. And for a movie that I think nails the xenomorphs, I don't have a complaint about that pretty much at all. That was kind of disappointing, not gonna lie, because you got to remember, Predators don't have as many movies, and definitely not as many good movies. So if anyone needs some solid representation, it's them. And I don't think they found it in this movie. So, they're half of the equation. And I think that is unfortunate that they didn't really deliver there.
Well, I don't have it listed here in my bad, just because I had more that I wanted to talk about. But just to go off of what you said there, my issue isn't actually with the look overall of the Predators. I actually think that making them pretty big and intimidating, towering over these actors, and maybe it's because I'm a big wrestling fan. I don't know. But you're right. They did feel like, there could be a wrestler under there, and
You know who should have played Waylon Bishop?
who?
Vince McMahon. Oh, imagine that.
That's a hot button
Imagine
topic
that.
these days, but
Oh,
no,
shit, I
but
forgot about that. Oh my god.
well, after he got finished paying off his mistresses, I'm sure he could have done a great job. But no, getting into it, honestly, my biggest issue with the look of the Predators was when they took their mask off. I liked everything up until that point. It's interesting because there's so many parts of the Predator's face that look recognizable. It has the mouth, it has the skin color that you came to recognize with the first film, and even Predator 2, if you're a fan of that one. But somehow it was like less intimidating. It looked less mean. It looked less angry. It looked more friendly.
It
And
looked like a PG-13.
it did. It looked like a very watered down version of what the Predator should look like. And that was really where my issue came in. In fact, I thought the mask design for a lot of the Predators in this film actually stepped up from the previous films. And that's coming from somebody who did enjoy how the Predators looked in both 1 and 2. But I think some of the mask designs were really cool. And I think the big towering Predators, like, I'm cool with that, especially considering it's a full race. I'm cool with there being some bulky Predators. I just wish that their face wouldn't have been so, it was even less PG-13 and more PG.
Yeah, I think it's not just about their physique. I think it's the way they move on camera.
I get what you're saying too.
Yeah, right. Because when I think of the Predator, and I realize that this is a whole race, but this isn't really time to change up the formula in this movie.
I got you.
They're so calculating. They move like hunters, and these guys, I mean, they use their cloaking device sometimes. Other than that, they are not here for stealth. That ain't the game they're playing. Okay. So I think I know a lot of people just like to complain about the physique, but for me, it really does just add up to a larger problem I have with them.
And that's completely fair too. And honestly, like, that's not to say I don't have any issues with both aliens and Predators in the film, which actually will lead to my first actual bad point. And the humans feel way too powerful for me. The Predators and aliens sort of take a backseat to how powerful our main character is, which I am not against. I think this is one of those films that should have ended with no survivors on the human side. I think I saw some people say you didn't need people in the movie, and I completely disagree with that point. I don't think in 2004 or even today, a mostly silent film about an alien being hunted by a predator would not work. But at that same token, it felt like, they were almost playing second fiddle to the human characters. And I don't think that was the right thing to do. At the end of the day, when you watch Freddy versus Jason, the showdown between Freddy versus Jason is the focus of the film. And you don't really see as much of a direct impact that humans really have on that fight as you would in something like this. And it just felt like you took this extremely creepy and just sort of like brooding character with the aliens, and you took this very calculated hunter of the predator, and you didn't let them reach their full potential in a battle against each other in the way that I think should have. It felt like the humans felt way too important in that battle between alien versus predator. And I'm curious to see if you agree, because I know that you're not necessarily the biggest defender of the film, but you are somebody who really enjoyed it. Was that an issue for you, or is that something that didn't really bug you?
I got to be honest, that's actually almost something I liked about it. I think and I did not go in even expecting that much AVP action, right? Because I know that's a complaint the movie has. And I'm not sure how much I agree with that. But look, at the end of the day, a movie that stands the test of time should have these characters that we care about, or at least we can identify with, to guide us through everything. I mean, do they start to overshadow our monsters? I think to an extent, but these are silent killers and creatures without much personality. So I don't really see how that was avoidable in that case, because in Freddy versus Jason, you got Freddy Krueger, who, I mean, his personality overshadows everybody.
Well, right.
Every movie,
Yeah.
right. And that's just not the case here. So
Yeah.
I think I can understand it better when I remember that, people have been watching this movie for a long time, and I think that they have always wanted a little more AVP out of it. They wanted, more of what they came to see.
Yeah.
For me, I just, my expectations were so low that I just wanted a decent protagonist and, a minimum of actual alien on predator action. What is that? Is that how you say it? No, that doesn't sound right.
It sounds a little bit more like you were talking about the porn parody of Alien versus Predator, which, hey, I mean, no, I'm not gonna make a comment about the predators, about the predator's mouth and about the face huggers looking like vaginas. I'm not gonna say that. I don't think that's right to say. But anyways, let's. I want to dive in because I want to hear your next bad point.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I have to say is going to go into the ugly section. But and this is overall a mixed thing. But the first fight with the alien and the predator, no, didn't do it for me. There are cool moments. Like, I do like how the alien gets out of the predator's little nest because of its acid blood. Although you would think that the predator would know that, like he would anticipate that, but whatever, it's a fight. Things are happening quick.
Yeah.
I actually thought you were going to say that the predators seem very weak. They're down 2-0 after this fight. Yes. And the last one definitely wouldn't survive if not for the help of the regular human, a regular person. I guess that actually does go to what you were talking about. So in that respect, I agree more, because I don't really like to see such a one-sided movie. There are still cool moments for the predators. I think of that time when the face hugger jumps out and he just kind of snaps its neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid moment. But this is the first fight. Everybody's so hyped. And by this point, I imagine people are getting impatient. So I can only imagine the disappointment that a lot of people felt. I think if the first fight's action was as good as like the best action in this movie, it wouldn't be such an issue. But it's the first fight. This is something you really want to nail, and they didn't nail it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I would have been more acceptable. Like, I'd have been able to accept it a little bit more if the action sequences weren't shot so terribly. In my opinion, there's almost no fight scene in this movie that's shot well. I think so much of the movie is very technically proficient, like I mentioned in the good section. I think there's a lot of amazing shots and camera work and lighting, and everything kind of works together to make it a very proficient film on a technical level, except when you get to the fight scenes. And I think when you already have a fight scene that's underwhelming, when you already have, and like you said, the predators being sort of so weak, like, in the Alien versus Predator comic books, it talks about the fact that, like, predators, it's like a 40-2 ratio for aliens versus predators, because they're that much more of an intelligent hunter, and the odds of them beating the aliens are that much more. And I would have liked to have seen that taken into account here, because like 1 or 2 xenomorphs take out 2 of the predators almost immediately. So that definitely was a problem for me. I didn't like how there was this imbalance, especially in the fight scenes. The predators seem to be more lucky than smart and intelligent and calculated, like they are in Predator and Predator 2. But with that being said, I think I would have been more accepting of the action sequences if I felt like I was watching something that was being shot well. I think films like John Wick these days kind of spoil us with these amazing action sequences that are shot well and the camera's not shaking too much every time they step, and there's no crazy zooms and close-up shots right before an action sequence, and it's done very well nowadays. I think that's kind of spoiled me a little bit, but I wish it would have been shot a little bit better, because I think I would have been a little bit more accepting of the underwhelming nature of the fight scenes.
Yeah, it's funny because even though Paul W.S. Anderson is an action director, I actually think what excites him more is the world building. I don't think it doesn't seem like he cares that much about the action, about the fighting. Definitely not the Alien and Predators fighting. I think he loves the scenes of characters discovering a new room and setting off a booby trap and seeing these hieroglyphics, like just like in Event Horizon, his best movie. He really loves actually explore this crazy alien, no pun intended, universe. And
I like what you did there.
That's what he did. Unfortunately, he's here to direct a movie called Alien versus Predator, so you could say maybe he wasn't the best guy for the job. But me and him kind of share that, because I don't know about you, I'm not 12. I do like world building. I think that's the stuff that lasts. And honestly, even if the action had been really good in this movie, I doubt it's what I would have walked away thinking about or particularly remembered about it,
Yeah, and I completely agree with you when you say that, because I think he's one of those people too that takes it as a challenge to make every scene interesting. You can kind of tell, because when something is not happening that's interesting as far as like dialogue and world building and story goes, he tries to do something different with like camera angles or camera movements. And even looking through his filmography, I mean, I don't think any of his action films are shot that particularly well when it comes to the action sequences. I mean, just before this, he did Resident Evil, which as much as I do enjoy that film as like a nostalgia piece, the action sequences are not shot well in the first Resident Evil film. Just before that, he did Mortal Kombat in '97. The action sequences are not shot very well in that either. And I think he's just one of those actors. I agree. I think he does two things when he tries to make a movie. He tries to make it as exciting as possible. I call it the Michael Bay effect, where you just sometimes if a scene's not interesting, you just do something to make it interesting. And I think he likes to build, the world and the stories. And I think that's probably the strongest thing about the film. While I think there are definitely aspects of the story and the overall writing that are weak, he does do a good job of setting us in this story, in this world, and he built it pretty well. And even though the way that they kind of revealed everything to us is not great, I think that's where his strong suit is. I would love to see him maybe do a more grounded film nowadays, and that might be controversial. I don't know. But I think that's where he would shine. If you gave him a film like that, let somebody write it who really cares about the story that they're writing, and let him go crazy with working with the set direction and working with the camera movements and the lighting and the set design and everything, just to create to do what he does best in a lot of these films. So yeah, I agree with you.
More than Michael Bay, even, he reminds me of J.J. Abrams.
He's sort of like their love child.
Maybe that might be controversial. It's not to me, because JJ is a hit or miss dude. Hit
Very
or
much
miss.
so.
And more miss than hit, if I'm being honest. He has a better, he has a better batting average than Paul W.S. Anderson, but at the same time, he does more properties that I like and care about. So yes. When he misses, it offends me more. Look, again, this is not why Alien versus Predator is actually a masterpiece, or why Paul W.S. Anderson is actually like a great director. It's just putting things into perspective. And I think pretty much everything you said was valid. All of those criticisms, and somebody else will have a million more criticisms of this.
Of course. Of course.
In fact, we'll get to people's criticisms very soon. But yeah, I think still none of those to me stack up enough to the point where I would concede this is a boring movie or a lame movie. or a lazy movie. That's just me.
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely agree with that. And I'm curious, while we're here, did you have another point in the bad that you wanted to discuss? Or
Yeah,
I know you said most of yours would be in the later section, but
right. I do have more bad to say, and I think I will save the majority of that with the ugly. Here's my final thought for this section. This is a much better Alien movie than a Predator movie. And I like the Predator quite a bit as a movie monster. So that, I don't say that lightly. That is a disappointment. But for some reason, I guess it's probably because Anderson is a bigger fan of the Alien franchise. The aliens are just, I think, treated more accurately, more cinematically. I really love the way he actually depicts them. Like, again, the Queen alien, I think whenever you see them crawling around and snarling, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's xenomorph, motherfucker. And then when you see the Predators, like there's one shot where they're running down a hallway and I'm like, this is not the vibe.
this ain't it, Chief.
Yeah. So that's my overarching thought for what I don't like about the movie. It's just a much worse Predator movie than anything else.
And that's fair. That's one of my least favorite parts, as somebody who really does, and I really do value Predator as a movie monster, and I think he could have been utilized a lot better. And I think the Xenomorphs definitely could have been utilized better too. I think they definitely stuck closer to the source material than the Predators did. They definitely stood out in the film more than the Predators did. I don't know, maybe that was a condition of the films. Obviously, certain Alien made a lot more money as a franchise at this point than Predator. So maybe it was just some sort of note or whatever it was. I guess we'll never know. At least I wasn't able to find any background on it. But while you highlighted your last con there for the bad section, I got to highlight something that really bugs me here.
Please.
And I don't know if this is something that is hated. So if it is, forgive me, because I don't want to take away from from the ugly section, but I have a huge issue with the deaths in this movie, a huge problem with it. And my problem is not that the deaths are not good enough. I think they're definitely dumbed down for the PG-13 rating. I think there's a lot that we could have seen that would have enhanced the experience of watching the movie if it were rated R. But my biggest issue is that we already don't care too much about most of these characters, but they do a little bit of work in the beginning to make us care about a few of them. And none of their deaths matter. The character in particular that I cared about, and this was the only character that I cared about through the entire film, was that goofy Scottish guy. I love him in every movie he's in. He's great in The Rundown. He's great in Wonder Woman.
I think of him as Spud from Trainspotting.
Yeah, that's a good one too. He's awesome in everything he's in. I miss the days where he was in more films, and I wish he'd be in more now. But at the same token, he's the one character that I feel like is a shining example of how disappointing the build and execution of deaths are. You make us care about him initially, if you're into the movie at all, by introducing us to his children at the beginning of the film. We see pictures, we see he's just trying to be a good dad, he's trying to take pictures for his kids, and he's trying to do all this stuff. And then it seems like they kill him out of nowhere, just no build, nobody witnesses it, no nothing. And then when they do actually kill him, it's equally as useless. I think he has a more meaningful death than some of the other people that we see throughout. But at the same time, it's like we were supposed to care about this guy. But then later on in the movie, the one death that didn't mean anything was given so much weight with this that foreign archaeologist guy that she has to shoot. She's sitting there crying her eyes out for what? Because you wanted to bang the guy? Like, I don't understand. Like, that's why you're gonna care. This guy over here has two children at home that he's trying to get home to and provide for, and this guy that has a Pepsi cap around his neck is the guy that you're gonna cry about. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Let me explain something, Connor. This is a really sophisticated cinematic technique. So Spud has a Scottish accent, which is funny. This guy has an Italian accent, which is
which
sick.
is hot. Yes.
Yeah. Romantic.
But there's a major issue with that though, because just make the Italian guy the one who shows us his kids. Make him the one that connects with her from the beginning. Don't bring the Scottish guy in as a comic relief character. And look, he is the perfect comic relief character. If you've ever seen The Rundown, he is one of the best parts of that movie. But at that same token, you introduce him. The scene that he is introduced, he shows the audience and our main character a picture of his children, and his death is treated like nothing. The only thing that we get out of his death is that he fought to the bitter end for his children, and even that is stretching it. Make us care about these deaths more. He's not the only one. Waylon, when he's killed, they try to make us care about him. He's the shadowy billionaire that turns out to actually be a decent guy who's gonna sort of sacrifice himself in the end.
I mean,
okay, he was okay, and he's going to sacrifice himself. That was his redemption moment, and his death. You don't even see how he really dies. Like it's basically a cutaway. They don't show any of the stabbing. They don't show blood. They don't show anything, and it's just like nothing means anything until you get to a death that doesn't actually mean anything, and then they try to make it mean everything.
That's really interesting. So my first thought is, actually, I feel like what you're saying really describes the majority of deaths in all of these movies, in the best of these movies. Like in Predator, the original Predator, one of my favorite characters is Billy, and he's standing on that bridge, ready to throw down with the Predator. And I remember thinking like, damn, we're about to see the most badass fight. No, it's a cutaway kill.
But see, I think that works better.
Okay.
I really like that. Here's the thing though. Maybe it's a thing of characters, okay? Because in this movie, in Alien versus Predator, I didn't connect with any of the characters except the Scottish guy and the main girl. Those are the only two people that I actually connected with throughout the entire film. Those are the only ones that I cared about, the only ones that I'd be like, oh, it sucks that they die. Everybody else, I didn't care about. But when I watch Predator, I care about all of those characters, even the ones that are a little bit flawed. I don't want to see Jesse Ventura die. I got time to bleed. I don't want to see that fucker die. I don't want to see Apollo die. I don't want to see fucking Schwarzenegger die. I don't want to see Billy die. I don't want to see any of them die. Who's that? What's that fucker's name that's always shaving? I like him too. I don't want him to die either. So it's like you care about these characters enough to not want them to get killed. So when they die, their deaths are impactful and they're treated impactful by the rest of the characters.
Yeah, look, if the criticism is basically this cast of characters is not anywhere near as compelling or engaging as the characters we've gotten in previous films, I totally agree. I really only I like the Italian guy. Okay. He's fine. I like the Pepsi cap. I like that he's there to point out that a full moon is called a hunter's moon. I mean, and people say that Anderson doesn't know subtlety, man. Like, yeah. So if that's a criticism, I agree. But I actually think that what Anderson was trying to do was actually stay true to the way that these movies have always approached their deaths. Like personally, I liked Spud's death. I'm going to call him Spud. I liked how nihilistic it felt. It's one of the few times where the movie gets pretty gnarly, and it's like you think he's kind of maybe rescued himself, and then the camera just pans over and you see all of these face huggers. I thought that was a good moment. I thought that was actually very that was worthy of his character. The problem is there's just not enough characters to give a shit about. So when they die, I mean, what doesn't even matter if it's a good death or not. It's like, who even was that person? I didn't know their name. So I feel like the criticism is twofold. I agree with half of what you're saying, but I'm more forgiving about, I feel like, the other half of the criticism.
That's fair. And that I'm curious though, since that was sort of like a half agreement, I'm curious what you'll think of this. And I don't even know if this is something that really registered with you. I'll make this the last one that I mentioned here, because I think everything else is going to be brought up. The ugly section might be one of the longer ones that we have of any film.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what you think about this one. And I felt like the Predators introduction and their first kills were so out of nowhere and sudden and just did not work. I mean, like there
Not
was
a
like
very good Predator movie. That's
no,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
but like that it also like for a movie that's paced so well for the rest of it, and for I think maybe coming up to that, I think like you said, audiences maybe were a little restless for the first showdown, because there was so much kind of build up to it. But generally, I think the film's pacing is pretty decent. But this scene is a perfect example of like how it just gets thrown for a loop for like I'd say 20 minutes of the film just from this one little sequence, because the predators they show up in their spaceship, right? And then they're looking around and they see the humans, and then our humans go into the tunnel, and then we cut back up and people are just fucking dying. And it's just like, okay, well, maybe give us a little bit more of like that stalking element. And like you said, where's like they use the invisibility to walk up on them, but then when they get up there, they take it away. Isn't the whole point to stay invisible so that they can't see you? The first guy sees the predator and shoots at him. So it's like nothing about that worked. The kills were lame. The predators looked kind of strong, I guess, but they're just like throwing people around. That's not what predators do. And it happens so suddenly that it's just like the only build was the fact that we saw him come on the spaceship. Like we can't get any more build than that. It just came out of nowhere.
When people say this movie doesn't have suspense, they're talking about this scene. Like this scene really encapsulates, I think, what everybody doesn't like about this movie. It's blunt in a pretty uncreative way. It really diminishes the presence of such an epic monster. I mean, what's a greater movie monster than the Predator? And it waters them down. Like this is the worst example of the PG-13 showing, because they string up these guys. We all know what the Predators do. We know what their deal is, but these Predators know the kids are watching. So the clothes stay on,
they don't skin them,
stay in. The skin stays on. Like it's, and if you can't show, if you can't show what previous movies have shown, don't evoke it. Just move on. Don't make us think about it. Just, I would have been happy just to see them lay waste to these guys and carry on with the movie.
Or even if you were just to like, I'm sure a hand would have been okay, just so that we can assume
something. They could have done something.
Yes, they could have done something, or they could have done nothing. Even if it was like him coming into a room and you just hear the chains and then he kind of screams, whatever it may be. Like the way that they showed it was super lame, and it put an exclamation mark on how terrible that scene is from start to finish. From the moment they cut up to the back to the surface where the predators are about to go crazy, till the moment that the guy dies at the bottom of the hole is some of the worst. It is in my opinion, the worst scene overall in the film, because there's nothing redeeming about it for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's my least favorite scene. It cements everything bad that I have to say about the Predators in this movie. And I imagine that when people saw that scene for the first time in theaters, they started to check out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's definitely a lot more that we can say about some of these bad things that happen throughout the film. Some of the things we maybe don't like, or even some defenses of things which we are going to get to when we do reach our ugly section. But we got one stop before we get there, I think. And I am wondering if you're ready to go.
I'm very ready.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, get ready to take your phone, your laptop, your tablet, whatever you have with you to grab your drinks, your snacks, your rotisserie chicken, and let's get ready to head to the intermission. And ladies and gentlemen, we have officially landed. Smooth landing into the intermission segment. I'm excited to give you some completely useless facts today. And we're kicking off with a fact about our director guy. AVP was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who also directed 1997's Mortal Kombat film, which saw John R. Leonetti at the helm of cinematography. He also did the cinematography for Dead Silence, which we covered in our awesome crossover episode with Tony Crespo of Flopbuster. Our next crossover with Flopbuster is coming up next with the other member of Flopbuster, Gabe, another Gabe. We're really excited about that one. Moving forward, however, we have a pretty interesting fact about this movie and some of the cast members, starting with Lance Henriksen. He plays the character of Charles Bishop Whalen, who is but this actor is no stranger to xenomorphs, as he appears in the movie Aliens and Alien 3, where he played the character of Lance Bishop, which I thought was really interesting.
Right?
No, his it said his character's name was Lance Bishop in those films.
Lance Henriksen plays Lance Bishop. That must have been a little joke. Okay, I'm sorry.
Could have been. I'm telling you what was on my letterbox when I checked it. I did double check because I couldn't believe it, but I looked at it 4 times. If I got it wrong, somebody will definitely correct me in the comments. But this is who he plays, which is interesting because in this film he's Charles Bishop Whalen, and then he's Lance Bishop in those movies. It seems like they just took those took those things, pushed them together. But he's far from the only cast member to appear in multiple films across the Alien and Predatorverse. Cast member Alex Lore, who played a spaceship crew member in the film, uncredited, also appeared in Alien Resurrection, which also featured AVP cast member Alec Gills, who also played a crew member on the space ship. He also appeared in Aliens, and he also appeared in Prey, which just came out this year. So he's a returning character in the Alien and Predatorverse, but he's not the only one either. Actor Ian White, who played the character of Scar, also appeared in Prometheus, the Alien prequel film. And Tom Woodruff Jr., who played Grid in this film, also appears in the sequel to this film, AVP Requiem, as well as Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, and Prey. So quite a few actors who are kind of well-versed in this Alien and Predator universe that was built by 20th Century, previously Fox, now 20th Century Studios. Finally, we have reached the point of the show where I nearly explode from all of the information that I'm throwing at you in a quick amount of time. So let's dive right in. Actor Colin Salmon, who plays Maxwell Stafford in the film, also appeared in the 2008 Lexi Alexander directed Punisher Warzone, alongside Julie Benz, who appeared in the 2016 independent horror film Havenhurst. This film stars our Lord and Savior Danielle Harris, who appears in the subject of our very first episode, Halloween 5. Halloween 5 also features actor Matthew Walker, who appears in the subject of our second episode, Child's Play 3. Now, I know everybody's thinking that I'm going back to Halloween 5 and I'm going to bring up our good friend Tamara Glynn, but that's not where we're going tonight. We're going somewhere a little bit different this time, because Child's Play 3 features Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 actor Brad Dourif, who in addition to appearing in Alien Resurrection, which connects him back to Alien versus Predator here, he also appears in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, with Viggo Mortensen, who appeared in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, alongside Jennifer Banco. Jennifer Banco appears in the subject of our third episode, Friday the 13th, The New Blood. This film happens to be directed by John Carl Buechler, who also directed the movie Troll, which features actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus of Seinfeld fame, who herself appeared in Black Widow with Scarlett Johansson, who appears in Avengers Infinity War with Chris Pratt, star of Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy features Benicio del Toro, star of the subject of episode 4, The Wolfman, which was also directed by Joe Johnston. Who's Joe Johnston? Well, he directed Captain America, The First Avenger, which features Tommy Lee Jones, who appears in the subject of our most recent episode, Batman Forever. Oh God, I'm about to die.
Give you a round of applause.
I'm going to get to a point where I'm not going to be able to connect it to every film we've done. And I hope that's the case. But right now, I'm going to get as long-winded as I can with these. And since I spent so much time bullshitting, hot dogging, and grandstanding, I think we take this moment to transition into a part of the show that I think a lot of detractors of the film have been waiting for. What do you say we jump over to the ugly?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Really excited to talk about the ugly today. Love the hell yeah. I love the enthusiasm. I'm actually really pumped to get into this. And today we have some information about the film. Obviously, if we're talking about it on this show, it's a contested one. It doesn't have a great rating, and it's got a lot of people that don't like it. Currently, Alien versus Predator sits at a 2.5 average on Letterboxd, which makes it eligible for this show. And it doesn't have the greatest reviews when you go through. Obviously, a lot of times when you leave a review on a site like Letterboxd or IMDb, it's because you have a reason to, whether that reason is hating on the film or loving on the film. And this one, truthfully, had a lot of reviews that people were really loving on it. I did see some reviews, however, that were a little worse. So I'm going to go down in the order here on star ratings. Starting off with a 3-star review from Jay on Letterboxd that says, sexual tension between the predator and a human woman was not on my bingo card. Really agreed with that one. Didn't have that one on my bingo card either. But next time I'm going to be sure to put that on there before I watch an Alien and Predator movie. Jumping to the next highest review, a 2.5-star review from Sam on Letterboxd that says guilty pleasure unlocked. Really thought that review was kind of funny. But then we get to probably the most eloquently put review that I have covered so far. This is the last review that I'll be highlighting, and it's a review from Kat on Letterboxd. She gave the film 1 star and simply said, no. I thought that was the most eloquently put review so far. Definitely the best grammar. It has a period at the end of it, so got to give her some points for that one. But again, obviously this film inspires some sort of malice, and I think you should get us started, since it's your pick, with giving us one of the points that people don't like about this movie.
Well, it's really hard to argue with such a well constructed argument.
No,
but I will try.
No.
I will try.
Yeah.
Actually,
you got an uphill battle here, buddy.
I really wished that I had thought of that, like to leave a review of a movie that just said no. That's good.
I kind of wish that I would have done it, but
actually, so I did leave a 1-word review on Letterboxd recently, but it was a positive review. I watched The Boy recently. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah, it's been a little while. I need to revisit it.
I was pleasantly surprised by it. I thought it was really good. So I said, "Hey." That was my what I understand the main complaints to be revolve around these things. First off, this is the first and only movie in either franchise to be rated PG-13. That is nothing to sneeze at. That these are 2 very violent, and in Alien's case, it's actually very sexually charged in its own oblique way. But still, not kid-friendly material, not something to fit in between Spider-Man 2 and, whatever. Like it's a big deviation, and I understand the complaint. I agree with it to an extent, even though I like to think of this as a gateway movie. Me as an adult, yeah, I wish there was an unrated cut. I wish they had just done 2 takes. A lot of movies have done that. I think Live Free or Die Hard is an example. But obviously, at the end of the day, does that actually make it a better movie to have blood or sex or any of those things? Yes, but I'm not going to hold it against Paul W. Sanderson, who I'm sure was just doing what the studio told him. And I mean, it paid off. Like, this movie made bank. I don't know if it's the highest grossing movie of this whole franchise, but it's up there. Like, it was a monster hit. So it paid off. I just, I think we even touched on it. Some scenes where the PG-13 is really slowing down Paul W.S. Anderson, and it's just it's a big old stain on the movie sometimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of the human deaths, I think, should have more been from the alien side of things, because I think that's a little bit easier to fit into a PG-13 film. It's really kind of disappointing to see some of that muted down, but at the same point, like, even the language is muted down, you know, and language isn't a big thing in films for me unless you try to put it in there. There is a very apparent scene where this movie is PG-13 where she tries to do the "you are one ugly motherfucker," but she
You know
can't
what
say
annoys me?
motherfucker.
Do you know what annoys me? They actually do drop an F-bomb once. They get one F-bomb
Mhm.
as a PG-13 movie. You don't save the F-bomb for that? Really?
I I couldn't, but I think that just sort of shows like what a problem it was to make it a PG-13 film. When I was watching it, I mean, that it's one of the most glaring things about it, if you've seen Alien and Predator films before this one, is how just toned down it is, both for both sides of the characters. I think the aliens are a little bit easier to pull off in a PG-13 environment. I could more so see them being a franchise to take that direction, but not the Predator. And that could play a lot into like what I don't like about the Predators in the film and what you've highlighted about what you don't like about them. It could all somewhat boil down to the PG-13 rating. But yeah, it's a big problem. It's something that you can't ignore while watching the film. I'm not one of those people who just calls for the most violent movie I've ever seen every single time I watch a film. Sometimes I like a ladybird, but this is not supposed
Also
to be
rated
that.
R though. You got to remember it.
Well, yes, but
The MPAA thinks that a 13-year-old can't handle ladybird, but they can handle this. I love it. I love.
yeah.
And now, to me, I think my reaction to all of this PG-13 controversy is very muted because Aliens versus Predator Requiem was R-rated, was quite violent, and is one of the most unwatchable movies out there. Like, literally so goddamn dark, you can't see a thing for most of it. And
Literally unwatchable.
right. And then the shit you do see, I don't want to see that. Like, I get that you want to be a hardcore motherfucker. You're not making Martyrs. You're not making a Serbian film. This is still, I'm going out with my buddies to see this. Just calm down.
Oh my God. I'm throwing this on in the living room with a beer and my wife sitting next to me. I don't need all this shit. I'm glad you didn't pick that for this, because I wouldn't have been looking forward to watching that again.
If I had picked that, we would have had to change the title of the show to Actually the Worst. Really? That
Actually,
yeah.
the worst. Oh my God.
Because like literally, like I know, whatever we say about this movie, like all the pros that we have cannot be applied to Requiem. It does not have an interesting setup. It does not have any interesting character. It doesn't have any atmosphere or production value. It doesn't have, if it does have good effects or creature designs, I can't see them because they're so fucking dark.
Maybe that's why it was so dark, because they suck. But I'm sure these are all complaints that that audiences had for Requiem. But since we are covering the first film, I do want to highlight something that I saw very consistently throughout, which was bad story and writing. I want you to kick us off with this one, because I'm curious where you're going to land overall. Like, obviously, there's parts of the story where I've sung my praises and you've agreed so far. What do you think overall about like the writing, the dialogue, the characters, and the story?
Amy, how do you judge a good story for this? I mean, that's an honest question. Like, is it the amount of character arcs that you can spot? Is it the number of things that are set up and paid off? Is it just the ability to bring these two characters together in a believable way? I guess what I'm trying to say is it succeeds at some things and fails at others. I mean, I think the big thing for a big blockbuster monster movie is pacing. And I think that, with exception, is pretty spot on. There's a really great sprinkling of the mythos of both universes. and we didn't really touch on this much, but the actual things that we learn about the aliens and predators, I think are pretty cool. I think they add to the universe. I think where Paul W.S. Anderson falls is just um I guess character, but I feel like it's just all, I don't think he injects a lot of personality into his writing, you know? And the stuff that I do like is very reminiscent of other things. Like characters here remind me of characters from other movies in this franchise. That's welcome, but he's not swinging for the fences when it comes to any of this. So I think that's my big thing. It's not very ambitious, and I think that makes it come across as lame sometimes.
Yeah, I think where the film itself excels at sort of showing us the effort that was put into the movie, I think the script undoes a lot of that. While there are elements that I did highlight that I love about the story, I think let's be real. People are not coming to this movie for the greatest characters they've ever seen.
No.
They're coming in to see aliens versus predators. But even in that regard, there's a lot of setups that fail to live up to expectations. There's a lot of absolutely inexcusable dialogue, at points funny for me. There's a lot of points in the movie where I just don't feel connected to what's happening. But the biggest sin for me, and I can excuse all those things. Look, being a huge Star Wars fan, I can excuse bad dialogue. Okay. You have to be a fan of those movies. But where it falls short for me is that I have to care about something, right? Like there has to be something in this movie that makes me care enough to keep watching. And where there are some movies where, whether it's a monster film or even films within this own universe, they make me care about something so that I can watch the film and not walk away feeling like I don't know, watched a fan film. I feel like that's one of the things that separates Hollywood pictures from a lot of fan films, especially fan films that were made a long time ago, is that when you make a fan film, it doesn't really have the time to flesh out some of the characters, and it really doesn't have the time to make it interesting for the characters that you see. And it doesn't have enough time to make you care about everything. But this film kind of did. And I felt like it fell short of that. And that's where the biggest sin is for me. There's nothing in this movie that I can genuinely say I cared about by the end. Even though they tried to inject a little bit, and that I will say I appreciate, where they tried to inject a little bit of urgency with, we can't let the predator or the aliens reach the surface. But even with like with the predators and humans matching up together, I mean, that's part of the story element that I hated, to be completely honest with you. So there's so much about the story that doesn't work for me, but the biggest thing to me is that there was nothing that I found myself caring about by the end of the movie. And that's a big sin for me. I can't, that takes it to a point where I can't really defend the writing anymore.
So you don't even care about Lex. You don't care if she lives or dies.
Not really. I'll say this. I think in her case, by the end of the film, I was intrigued by her a bit. I liked the look of I like the fact that we were left with somebody who potentially could have been a final girl, but was sort of stronger than a final girl would be, in a sense. Like, she seems to have gone on the offensive, and she accepted these cultural things from the predator, such as getting her face burned. And it's a good, I told my wife during it, I was like, a good thing she didn't wince, because in the predator's sort of culture, if that's sort of like an initiation ceremony. So if you scream or yell out in pain during that, they probably would have killed her. But that's like part of the ritual with the whole thing. But no, it's not, I didn't care whether she lived or died, but I thought the character was, there were intriguing things about the character. I didn't completely disagree with you when you said that she was like one of the more interesting parts of the film. Mm-hmm. But I didn't find myself caring. I didn't feel like they gave us a reason to.
Oh no, I'm not going to go that far. I did care. And I even, people might make fun of me for saying this. I kind of got sad when that predator died. I don't
I'm
know.
certainly not going to make fun of you for it. I can see how you would. They set it up so that that was what we should feel, I think.
I mean, they really want you to feel sad when it dies.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of a sucker when it comes to the sympathetic monster. So I don't know. I think not that they built a great relationship, but at the end of the movie, something happened and I emotionally responded. Which again, for this type of movie, like I don't demand much of it. Even if I had just been able to say, yeah, it was some really fun world building, really interesting camera work, things like that. Yeah, I would have been like, hey, I give it a pass. That takes it to a higher level. Obviously, there's a huge ceiling before you get anywhere close to an alien or a predator or a bunch of other monster movies that I could mention. But if you just compare it to other horror movies or monster movies of the time, like that's a fun little thought experiment. I'm gonna go in monster movies from the early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm curious what'll come up for that.
Nothing famous. Okay.
Well, I know, like if you're talking the same general time frame, there was that Godzilla movie that came out in '99.
Oh, way better. Way better. That Godzilla movie is not coming on this podcast, by the way.
I will not be. A guest is going to have to bring that on because I will refuse. I will refuse to watch it any other.
And
way.
I will exile that guest from. No,
they're not welcome back. Fuck you. We'll watch it this time, but you're not coming back.
Yeah, but like the Jurassic Park sequels, there was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a very different type of movie. But look, there was a drought of genuinely entertaining monster movie cinema going on. And there still is to an extent. And this is a last hurrah in its own way. So again, I mean, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. It has everything I wanted out of a monster movie, including a monster that I felt somewhat sympathetic towards. And yeah, if you're into the movie, I feel like you're going to think that's a cool direction. If you already don't like it, that's going to be the final nail on the coffin. But I was digging it. So I'm like, yeah, and maybe, maybe after the Predator and Lex win, maybe they'll go out. Maybe they'll see a movie.
Sexual tension was not on my bingo card.
But it's undeniable, isn't it?
That's why I love the review so much, because I read it and I was like, there really do be a lot of sexual tension between the human and the predator. She wanted to lick those dreadlocks or something. I don't know.
Oh shit, Connor. Oh yeah.
There's the horniness that the alien movies brought in. The alien influence is shown by the fact that she goes from wanting to fuck this Italian guy to wanting to bang a predator.
Okay, yeah, and I'm still not even saying like a genuinely famous monster movie from the early 2000s. The only thing I can think of is Peter Jackson's King Kong, which is a better film, but it's also a film I would watch less times because it is twice the length.
Oh my God. Well, that's the thing too, is like, I think that has to be one of the things that you take into consideration. And it's something we, at the point that we're recording this, we just came off of an appearance on Kyle Curtis Flett's Return to the Living Flet channel to talk about 80s horror films.
Yeah,
and
shout out, of course.
Yes, it was an amazing experience. We thank Kyle Curtis for welcoming us on the show and for being so he was complimenting the hell out of us, raising my ego more than it needed to be raised. But we really appreciate coming on the show. But one of the things that I mentioned on there was that, part of my enjoyment of a movie is just considering, like, at the end of the day, how likely am I to turn on this film when I want to watch a movie like this? And I think that's something that people have to think about when they give their final ratings on stuff, because at the end of the day, a movie like King Kong, like you said, undeniably better for most people, I think, as a film than Alien versus Predator. But would you watch Alien versus Predator before that because of how long, or even like movies that are super emotional. Those just aren't necessarily movies that you're going to put on before something that's a lot of fun. And I wish more people would consider that when, considering what rating they're going to give a film. Is at the end of the day, would you watch it again, and would you put it on before a film that you gave a higher rating to, or put higher on a list? Maybe you give a King Kong a higher rating when it comes to star ratings, but maybe you give a bump to a movie like Alien versus Predator because you're going to probably throw that on first. So yeah, I would say that I do agree with that point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to consider that.
Now, I'm curious, what else do people hate about this movie?
Well, we talked about this a little bit already, so we won't harp on it too much. It's the bad direction. A lot of people really don't like Paul W.S. Anderson. It's more so, it's funny, when Michael Bay films were coming out, and it might be because I was a little younger when they were like really popular, but I don't remember him getting as much criticism until a few years later. It's sort of like the Nickelback effect, you know what I mean? Where it's like when Nickelback was coming out, like 12 million people were buying the albums and listening to them, and you heard Nickelback everywhere you went. But then about 10 years later, there was no sin greater than listening to Nickelback. So
I don't know. I remember by Transformers 3, the Michael Bay backlash had been in.
Oh, by then for sure. I think with his case, it's a little bit less or a little bit more extreme with how quickly it progressed. But let's not forget that like he was doing Bad Boys and stuff before that. So it's not like, it takes some time for directors like that to have that sort of backlash. And for me, growing up a huge fan of the Resident Evil film, I didn't have any issues with Paul W.S. Anderson as a kid, because I feel like when you watch his movies, when you're a child and you watch his films, you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be. But it's exciting. It's flashy. We talked about this with Batman Forever. It's flashy, it's exciting. So when you're a kid, these movies really can resonate with you. And I think Alien versus Predator is an example of that. But I don't know that I could say it has this fantastic direction. I'm not going to hate the guy for it, but at the end of the day, I think there's a lot. The movie could have benefited a lot more from a director that could have shot everything well and could have directed every scene well, as opposed to just some of the scenes doing it very well.
Yeah, I see a guy who is putting in the effort in this movie. And
yeah, he's definitely putting in the effort.
Something that I really agree with. Like, he really does try to make every scene interesting. And there are, with this type of movie, you need to slow down, you need the exposition, and that's fine. But he says, okay, but at least can we put the camera on the other side of the room and then dolly across for the whole interaction?
Yeah.
Or can we set this in a dark cave and have it lit only by flares? Just little touches like that.
Yeah.
As somebody who knows, like, look, I directed a $3,000 movie.
A great $3,000 movie, by the way, if you're watching this and haven't seen it.
Thank you. But my point is, he directed how much? How many people
oh my God.
you have to direct?
Budget for this was huge.
So I just I can only imagine what he was going through making this, and the pressure he felt. And fine, he didn't do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
This is way better than most of his films, especially the ones that came out after this. Like, really.
Especially after this.
Yeah. And
he sort of peaked before this.
He honestly peaked with Event Horizon, to be honest. Yeah. Which is that's a film I really think showed the Paul Thomas Anderson. Holy shit. No, Paul W.S. Anderson. Big difference right there.
Big.
But still showed you a different side to the guy that he hasn't really had the chance to explore. And knowing how he got the opportunity to direct Event Horizon, it was almost like an accident. It was like he had downtime before his next movie. That was a script he had read recently, so he was like, okay, why not? I don't even think he knows what his real strengths are as a director.
That can be very fair. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was like a really atmospheric, Lovecraftian horror movie in space. And he hasn't made anything like that since. And the closest he has come has been some of the world building stuff in Alien versus Predator. kind of a shame, but still, I'm not going to lie and say that I think his directing is shit. It's not.
And that's the thing too, is like, I may not love it, but I'm gonna say this, like, the defense that I have for it is that at least he seemed to give a shit. And I'll say this too, like, no, he hasn't made a film since like Event Horizon since, but I would argue that probably most of the films that he's made since then have made more money than Event Horizon
For
made.
sure.
So
For
it's
sure.
clear that he knows what people wants, and he catered to the audience. Let's be like, what movie from 2000 to 2004 didn't feel like these movies? And some of them are shot better, and I'm sure that we'll cover hint hint, I'm sure we'll cover some films from around the same time period in future episodes. But at the end of the day, the one thing that I think is the biggest sin of a director is not giving a shit. When you come into a film and you don't care and you throw scenes together, or you're a terrible person, huebo, or anything like that, that shows. And I think that is what really makes me say that you're a bad director. Until then, you're just a director that I don't particularly like. And I'd say Paul W.S. Anderson falls into the category of a director that I don't love. He made my childhood pretty awesome with the Resident Evil film and Mortal Kombat. Those are two films that I pretty much wore the discs down and I wore the tape down for those films. But at the end of the day, does his direction shine in this movie like it does in Event Horizon? Absolutely not. But are there shades of it in some places? And do you see that proficiency that he could have? Yeah. That's why I'd really like to see him do something much more toned down in like modern times.
Yeah. But we're not here to talk about his later movies. We're here to talk about this movie. And if I had just seen this movie, didn't know who directed it, I'd be like, I want to check out this guy's other stuff. I bet he grew into a really cool director. I would have turned out to be wrong.
At least you can admit that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel kind of weird. I feel like I'm giving the impression that I'm way more into this guy than I am. He made one movie I really like and one movie that I think is not that bad. But yeah, I mean, I still see the things in here that I know why he keeps getting hired. I'll put it that way. Like I know why the studio hired him to make this movie. He had the right work ethic. He also had an ambitious vision, but knew the nuts and bolts well enough to actually execute it on a budget. That was very important to them. I think the reason it took so long to make a crossover is because of the budget concerns. And he was a guy who, before anything else, he was not going to go over budget. That's important to people. It really is.
Oh yeah. And the other thing too is, like, I get what people mean by bad direction too. And it doesn't always fall necessarily on like what you see from like the camera and how the movie looks and how the movie feels and how different things were shot. That falls on the acting too, which is a big complaint that a lot of people have. People say that the acting in this film is not very good. And I think some of that could come down to how the actors are directed, I suppose. But that is a big complaint that a lot of people have. And in the interest of not continuing to harp on Paul W.S. Anderson here, I'm curious if the acting was as big of a problem for you as it was for a large majority of the audience.
No, honestly, like, look, all the characters aren't finely drawn. I mean, the actors do their jobs. Don't pick on the actors. It's kind of a similar thing. Like, did they deliver their lines in a believable way? Yes. Okay, then they did a fine job. Everything else basically goes down to the direction or the writing. So yeah, they did a fine job. And I've already highlighted some actors who I think deliver very good, very charismatic performances.
Yeah, I think there's some actors that do pretty well in the movie. I think it's hard sometimes when you're in a movie that doesn't have the strongest dialogue, when you're already not, you're already not going to win an Oscar for your performances in any film. When you're given bad dialogue to work with, that doesn't really do you any favors. So as much as I can say, like, yeah, there are points in time where the acting is sort of laughably bad, I think so much of that has to do with the dialogue that they're given. At the end of the day, if you put some terrible actors in Citizen Kane, there's going to be a few scenes that still turn out really good. But if you put the actors from Citizen Kane in a less satisfactory film, and a film that's not written as well, they may not have that great of an opinion that general audiences would have for them. So I can't harp on it too much. Most of my issues do come from the writing side of things, but I can see what people say. I mean, like you said, I think I agree more with you when you say they did their job. Nobody was brought in this movie to win best picture, to win best actor, best supporting actor. That's not what this film was made for. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more weight in some of the performances, but I think everybody did what they were brought in to do. So I can't harp on the actors too much. Most of my issue does come from the writing. You have to know what you're going into. It's the same thing where like movies have to know their audience, and I think this one knew its audience, but the audience has to know the movie. It's why I scratch my head at the fact that every year there's more hate for our boy Robert Zombert. Everybody goes and sees his films and shits on him every year, even though they've hated every film and shit on it every year it's come out. So it's like, you have to know what movie you're going into. I know that sounds like a weird thing coming from somebody who just said they don't like the writing in the movie, but I also think that there's a standard you should hold films to. At the end of the day, you should look at every aspect of the film and say, did I enjoy it? And that should factor into your rating. And especially me, who likes to dive into things like writing, being a writer myself, I know how difficult it is to write good dialogue.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of scripts returned to me for certain areas of dialogue that weren't great. And with a big budget movie that you want to, get going right away, and, it's not there to do Oscar work anyways, you can't really slack on it too much. But for me, it just really came down to being disappointed. I love the character so much that I wish it would have been written better. That's where my disappointment comes from. I wouldn't agree with anybody's criticism who came in and said it should be, Oscar worthy writing in every film they watch. It can't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do we have anything else?
That's all the points I had for Ugly. People have a lot of complaints, but I feel like from what I can tell, these were the ones that everybody weighed so highly.
Yeah. Well, no matter how ugly these points are, to anybody who hates this movie, there's one thing that's uglier. Your mama. Oh,
God damn it. Oh my God. Well, listen, man, we've already alienated two of our demographics. We alienated the rich white female demographic and the elderly female demographic, and now you've just insulted the mother demographic. And truthfully, I don't think I can ever forgive you for this.
Yeah, well, I guess we're exclusively now for people who were raised by two fathers. I think that's the last demographic we have.
That and people who were raised by feral animals out in the streets. I think those are the two real target areas that we're hitting right now.
Tarzan.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Tarzan. But no, I'm curious, as we reach our final area of the show where we reveal our final verdicts. I think I'm pretty sure where yours is going, but I'd like to hear your final thoughts and your final verdict.
Yeah, again, it is expectations, right? Like if I had seen this back in 2004 with the hype, I don't know how I would have reacted. I doubt I would have liked it as much as I do now. But as somebody who recognizes the effort that was put into this, mixed with this was not going to be an easy movie to pull off. And I really think that Paul W.S. Anderson did a great job. And he personally put the greatest emphasis on the things that were most important to me. The creature designs, the production design, and just the visual atmosphere of the world. And having at least one character that I could actually identify with. If it weren't for Lex, if it weren't for the fact that she guided us through the whole movie, I think I actually would have really started to it would have started to feel like a slog. Mm-hmm. But he kind of gets just the right amount of things. Like he does the bare minimum in a way. That doesn't sound very good, but Um, Look, again, this is a movie. I'm sorry. This is a franchise that has produced some of the worst sequels I've ever seen in my life. Uh, and I'm not going to name names, but you know, I think um, there was one about weaponizing autism. I remember. So, uh,
Oh,
so with that in mind, I do give this movie my endorsement because it does bring these two characters together in a satisfying way. And upon the, watching it in the right mindset that this is a B movie with some classic monsters, I think it's going to make for a damn good time. Watch it with your buddies, watch it with popcorn and a couple of beers. Have fun poking fun at it too. I mean, I feel like this is a movie that doesn't take itself that seriously. So you do get to have that experience too. It's just a movie that I like to have around.
so I'm guessing your final verdict would be that that this is not that bad.
Not that bad. It's really not. It's not really, really good,
Can't go
it
that
is,
next step.
yeah. It's not, it is compared to some of the other sequels, but considering how bad it could have been and how bad people say it is not that bad. Really. I would happily rewatch it.
I'm glad you landed on that perspective. And for me, like, at the end of the day, this is Alien versus Predator. This is monster versus monster, xenomorphs versus the Utja. This is something that a lot of people look forward to. It's a technically proficient film with great set pieces and a great subject with some great lore behind it. They introduced some really cool things to film for the first time within the Alien and Predator universe that I think was really good. And at that same time, they had, deaths that for me meant nothing, setups that didn't capitalize, and things that failed to live up to the hype for me for an Alien versus Predator movie. So comparing the good things that I had to say about it and the bad things I had to say about it, along with the defenses that I've had in the ugly section, I'm going to say, please go out and watch Alien versus Predator. But Letterboxd has a rating of 2.5, and I think it's a justified 2.5. I think it is that bad. This is the thing about it. At the end of the day, the reason I recommend people still go watch this is because I had a really hard time. And I know it sounds like I'm over dramatizing it here, but I had a really hard time coming to that conclusion. I had this movie at a 3.5 before I watched it this most recent time. I really did enjoy it. I think I really want to like this movie more than I do. There's so many things about it that I really want to like. In fact, when I was making the graphics for this episode, I was so excited to get to watching this again because I made everything for this episode before I got the chance to rewatch it. And I was hyped, man. Like I felt that hype again. And, there were so many things I didn't remember, but so many things I was excited for. And I sort of, in a way, simulated the hype that the film had in my own head, even having seen the film before. But for me, what I wanted, it didn't live up to what I would expect from a film like this. And it's not a film that I will ever say is a bad movie to watch. You shouldn't watch it. I disagree with anybody that likes it. That's not something that I would say because it's not something that I feel. I think anybody that likes alien films, predator films, monster movies, action films, sci-fi films, pick this up, watch it, have a good time with it, drink a beer, whatever you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's not a movie that I would, if I'm going down the list of films in each franchise, it's not at the top of the list of the ones that I'd watch. There are some worse films in there, and we're not naming names here. But I can't personally get past some of the things I didn't like. So in a weird way, and like I really mean it when I say like it hurts me to say that it's a justified 2.5, but I can't give it any higher with the expectations that weren't met and the things that I didn't like. But the things I did like, I really liked, and I really hope that that doesn't deter anybody from, who listened to this from going back and watching it again or watching it for the first time. Because I really do think there's a place for this with a lot of people, and I really think that people would really get some enjoyment out of it.
I would give it a 3, which is not that much higher than a 2.5.
It raises it above, the threshold, and I think that's why we picked under 3. Is because 3 is kind of that marker that's like, it's not necessarily a middle ground, but it's also not a middle. It's like the place to rate.
Yeah, honestly, 2.5 is a little higher than I was expecting. Right?
Yeah,
I feel like most people would give it a 2.
I think where it fell into when I was looking at the ratings was that most people either thought 2 or 3, and that's what brought it down. More people gave it, below a 3 than gave it above a 3, which is why we got the 2.5. It's definitely, it's weird. A lot of times with movies like this that are so contested, I look at the rating and I go, man, that is way lower than it should be. And I think this is one of the first times that I've really been like, no, like that's kind of spot on with the way that I felt. Because that 2.5 doesn't feel like a movie that you have a lot of malice for. That's like a 1 or a half a star, or even a 1.5, depending on what you liked about it. But yeah, I mean, there's no malice behind my 2.5 rating that I'm going to give it. Again, I recommend everybody go watch it. And for people who love the film, please feel empowered to love this. Gabe, feel empowered to have the opinion of that it's not that bad, because it's an opinion I really, really wanted to have. And it hurts me to not think that way. I really wanted to end the episode. I was hoping this would end like Child's Play 3 episode. And by the end, I'd be like, you know what? My ratings changed, but I just can't get there. And it hurts. It hurts a little bit for that to be the case.
Wow, we're really ending on an emotional note, and honestly, this is a more emotionally impactful review than Alien versus Predator. It wasn't an emotionally impactful.
It was, yeah.
So, with that being said, hey, as long as you're willing to admit that there's fun to be had here, I really have no problem with that opinion.
Oh, 100%. Go out and watch this if you haven't, or if you want to rewatch it, please.
Yeah, just even if you don't like the movie and you think it's really bad, I just want to stop seeing people call Paul W.S. Anderson a hack for making it, or the writer. I guess he wrote it. Yeah. But,
well, there were a few writers that are credited.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I just I don't think this was made by hacks. Maybe it was made by people who went on to become hacks, but they were not hacks at the time of recording, which is
they were not actively hacks at that time.
Yes. Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. And it's interesting. Again, we have come to a split decision. So audience, it's time for you to decide who's right, me or Connor, and whoever loses will be fired from the podcast.
Yes, whoever loses will be replaced and they will never be seen again. They'll have to change their name and move to Mexico or potentially Montreal.
Honestly, I wouldn't move to Montreal. So audience, if you want to give me a solid. Anyways, I mean, hey, you are literally actually on the side of the popular consensus. So, I might not even try to do this. But hey, this was still a great discussion. Man, I really enjoyed it. And as always, we are both so excited for our next episode. And I believe our next episode is a collaboration, correct?
Yes. Up next, we will be, we haven't announced the film yet. If you want to keep up with our announcements of episodes or teasers that we leave a week in advance, please follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Not That Bad, M as in movie, P as in podcast. On Facebook and Instagram, you can find us by searching at Not That Bad Pod. Follow us, give us a like, leave us a review on any of your favorite podcast platforms, leave us a comment on YouTube. But up next, we're going to be collaborating with Flopbuster again. We have Gabriel Tornero from Flopbuster. I really hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But I love Flopbuster. It's one of my favorite things to watch. They stream every Tuesday night and Thursday night at 10:05 Eastern, 7:05 Pacific. Give it a watch if you can. It's a lot of fun. And our next episode will be with him on a movie that, truthfully, if I've seen it, I have zero memory of it. And I'm really excited to dive into it with him. So I hope everybody loves the episode, and I hope you get hyped for it.
Yeah, so make sure you're following us on social media or on your favorite podcast platform so you get to see the episode first thing, or you can see the recorded version on our YouTube channel. This was, once again, a lot of fun. I always love to come at it a little different from my co-host here. It's always great to have a genuine conversation. And I've never seen the movie we'll be talking about next, and I'm going to be interested to see if I have much good to say about it. Either way, it's going to be one of our most interesting. So stick around.
Yes, it will.
But until next time, y'all, I'm Gabe.
I'm Connor.
And this is Not That Bad, signing out.